Betting Network.
It is the Tuesday edition of the Lombardi Line. Dave Ross here at Circus Sports, fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. Michael Lombardi back on the East Coast. A very important day, America. Hopefully you've already gotten out there and vote. Michael, I believe you got out early this morning on the East Coast and did your patriotic duty, correct, sir?
Well, you know, when you live in a little beach town that doesn't have a lot of people that reside in the wintertime, it becomes a real easy equation to go vote. I was over there at this yacht. We have it at the Yacht Club, which is right on the bay. And, you know, I was the 8th person that voted this morning. I got my little sticker that I took off before I came on the air. I was proud of that, you know. And, yeah, you know, as the great Charlie Palermo once said, if you don't vote, you can't complain.
Love it.
So, you know,
it's
right.
absolutely right.
Whether you're in one of those states, you know, I hear all these people say, well, my vote doesn't matter. I'm not in a swing state. Well, I mean, then you can't complain.
Totally agree.
Go there and vote anyway.
It's kind of like in Animal House, right? They can't do that to our pledges. Only we can do that to our pledges. This is our country. We can bitch and moan about it as long as we vote. Then you have the right to do that. I hope everybody gets out there like Michael did.
And I just hope we all have common sense, whatever the outcome is, and we just can come together as people and as a nation and move forward and go on, because life will go on. We know that. I mean, one thing that history has taught us, if you read anything about history and leadership and all that, where we think we're living in the worst times, and yet, you know, if you go back and through history, there was a lot more difficult times or similar. So it's all about moving on, and we have football, and we have betting to talk about. So it'll take our mind off of politics, which is the best part, right?
Absolutely right. Well said, by the way. I love a good history nugget to start off the show, that's for sure. But yes, to Michael's point, everybody, get out there, do your civic duty, and then let's all move on and hopefully have peace, love, and happiness for everybody. We've got a great show lined up today. Matt Youmans is going to join us, as he always does on Tuesday. Going to have Chuck Pagano join us as well. Can't wait to get his thoughts. What's going on in the NFL, of course, former head coach in this league. And Jonathan Von Tobel is going to join us in hour number 2 as well. But we do have, to wrap up week number 9 last night, the Chiefs did get the win in overtime, 30-24 over the Buccaneers. Buccaneers tied it up with 27 seconds to go in regulation in the fourth quarter, opted to kick the extra point, and then they do not win the coin toss in overtime, and Patrick Mahomes does what Patrick Mahomes does. Michael drives right down the field, scores the game-winning touchdown. So the Buccaneers still get the money. By the way, if you had the 9 with the Bucs, you still cash that. The over does cash late with that touchdown by Baker Mayfield. But I think the talk today, Michael, is should the Bucs have gone for 2? Let's hear from the head coach, Todd Bowles, on his decision to kick the extra point.
Very minor. We wanted to get it to overtime with the wet conditions on the field. We felt like we had to go in overtime instead of go for 2. So we had our shots. You know, we lost the game. We went for 1. We took our shots. We had our chances all game. We just lost the game. It didn't come down to that.
I love it. He's so right. I mean, go for 2. The weather was the crap, right? And it could play in your favor, too, because, you know, if you get the ball, you send it, you give your team a chance to win the game in overtime. I mean, who's to say that the ball isn't going to get stripped out? Who's to say a ball's not going to get tipped? I mean, there's no absolute that they're just going to drive it down the field like they did, right? We've seen it happen many times before. So I don't understand why we want to reduce football to one play. Like, why do we want to do that for the kid? They just put their blood and guts out there on the field. They laid it all on the line. If you told me that going for 2 was a 95% you could get it, I'm all for it. Let's do it. But it's 50-50. Like, they're not good odds. I mean, last time I checked, that's why the house has chandeliers. It's 50-50. You're not going to win that all the time. You had to run your 2-point plays when you got down there to the 1-yard line. I mean, I think Todd's completely right. But all these people that say go for 2 have never had to make the call. They've never had to walk into the locker room and look at a team and have to justify what you did and have them still have confidence in what you're doing, right? I mean, you can't. Now, look, I think to me, you're playing Mahomes. Look, they played good defense in the game. I mean, when the Chiefs got the ball back to try to drive it down the field, they had 40 seconds. They stopped them on that. I thought for sure the game was going to be over on a field goal there. Dave. Mm-hmm. I thought it was going to end there. I thought they weren't going to hold them. I thought they may have scored a little too early. Of course, they didn't do the Doug Peterson wiggle room. Let's run a wheel route and give the ball away here. They didn't do that. That's going to go down as one of the greatest clock management errors in the history of football. But to me, what not to do. But I just find this ridiculous, this unbelievable, and it goes back to the Barnwell column. There's no one pays the price for it. No one has to walk into the locker room and look at the players and say, this is why I did it. I had no confidence in you, defense. You couldn't stop them. I think you're terrible. That's what you're saying. You want to say that to your team? See, all these people that say do it have never had to lead anybody. They've never had to walk in a room and lead somebody and say, this is, you're basically saying, fellas, I don't trust you. Now, John Harbaugh did it. You know, I understand why he did it. He had Lamar Jackson. I think he felt like if you have a quarterback like Lamar, it gives you a little better chance, I think, on 2-point plays because you got to defend the perimeter. But to me, please stop.
I couldn't agree more. And again, I think also the narrative out there is, oh, well, the Chiefs are just that much better than the Buccaneers. So we have to take this one play opportunity to try to win the game right here. But Todd Bowles isn't looking at it like that. He's looking at it like we just played them even for 60 minutes. So I get what you all are saying for the whole season. But for right now, we feel like we are equal to this team here and now. And I think it's spot on to say, yeah, I don't trust my defense here. If we have to get to that situation, we don't know who's going to win the coin toss. Maybe we get it. And they did just stop them, as you mentioned, with 27 seconds to go. Chiefs could have gone down there and kicked the game-winning field goal. It was still tied, and their defense held. So I'm not getting on Todd Bowles today either for making that command decision to say, you know what, we just played this team dead even in their house for 60 minutes, so why leave it up to 1 2-point play, and does not guarantee victory, as you mentioned, there was still time on the clock for the Chiefs to come down, instead of taking our chances in overtime. Now, the overtime rules, Michael, they drive me absolutely insane because it's the only professional league, boy, even collegiate league, that you do not guarantee somebody the opportunity to possess the ball at one time. And the clock drives me nuts, that we only have a 10-minute clock, because now you see how the coaches are doing it. There's no rush. They're taking their time. So even if they don't score a touchdown, right, they're going to leave you 2-3 minutes to go for your other possession. Nothing about the coin toss is equality in the NFL. It does not exist. You come down to the chance of that coin toss is paramount. So if they could just figure out a way to make sure, like just make it untimed. So everybody's got a possession now. You still want to do the quirky thing where you score first, you win the game? I don't like it, but okay, that's fine. But the time should not be at a disadvantage because I had to play defense potentially to get that stop, and it might have taken 7 of the 10 minutes before we get to finally possess the ball. Didn't happen last night in that case, but do you understand what I'm saying there? And I don't know why the competition committee...
Yeah, no, I got you. I get you. I think there certainly is some merit to that. Look, you know, and my question, let's flip it backwards. Forget the overtime rules for a second. What would Andy Reid have done?
Kick the extra point.
What would Bill Belichick have done? What would Mike Vrabel have done in that situation? They would have kicked.
Yep.
They all would have kicked because they would have felt like my defense can stop them. You know, and even if they kick a field goal, I'll get the ball back, right?
Right.
And this weather is not very good. I mean, they might miss the field goal. It might be a bad snap. Who knows? I mean, this weather, nobody's sitting there playing in the weather. The ball's slippery. You know, and I think he took his chances. He lost. I mean, but that wasn't the play he lost on.
Right.
He had ample opportunity to come back in the game. He had ample opportunity to stop him before, and he just couldn't quite get it done. They ran out of gas. I think it was a great effort by Tampa. I think you could see Tampa isn't a team that should be 4-5, now headed to San Francisco. You know, I'm sure, or no, San Francisco's headed to them. And that'll be a hard game for San Francisco. There's no question coming off of that. We'll see if Christian McCaffrey, he's out practice today. I think that's going to be a dandy of a game. Yeah, it really will be.
I think it's a really good 4-5 football team without Mike Evans, without Chris Godwin. The fight that team shows me that Todd Bowles has got command of this locker room. And I think you nailed it perfectly. For anybody that's never been in the locker room, to have to go in there and face those guys after a game, you know, we media types, we get in there, 10 minutes after, and you see and talk to the players in the dejection, or, you see what's happening in Chicago. We'll get to that as the show goes on, how maybe they're losing that locker room. I think those players are going to look at Todd Bowles and go, no, we appreciate what you did. You give us a chance, but everybody on X is going to say, what's Todd Bowles doing? What's he's keeping together?
Because they've never had to go into a locker room.
Right.
They've never had to face it, I mean, the game should never come down to one play. A game's never come down to one play. There's obviously opportunities to win games at some point along the way. And I think Todd is really smart about that. You know, I keep saying, okay, if you're so smart and go for it, what would Parcells have done? He's in the Hall of Fame. What would Joe Gibbs have done? He's in the Hall of Fame. These guys are bad. What would Bill Walsh have done? I mean, here's what that no one understands is you have to look at your team. You have to look at your team when you make decisions. It's why Brendan Staley lost his team.
Right.
He made so many bad decisions, all of them that were embraced by the analytical community. Let's be clear here now. They were all embraced by the analytical. Every decision he made was embraced, but he lost his team. You can't be a head coach without having your team have confidence in your decision-making. And I think what Bowles did, he wasn't being conservative. He was feeling like, look, this weather's horrible. They could slip. Mahomes could go back there and fall right on his ass and be in 2nd and 20, and we're going to come off the field. Could have happened.
Yeah.
It didn't, but it could have. The weather was bad.
And they also missed a blatant
And you could say,
false
well,
start.
that makes more sense. We should have gone for it. Would have made more sense to go for it. No, it wouldn't have, because there's a good chance you would have slipped and fell on your ass, too, if you would have tried to go for it.
Totally agree. And again, and by the way, they did miss in the play to Kelsey to set up that the 3rd and goal from the 1. Missed a blatant false start. That should have backed them up, the Chiefs, on the play that preceded the game-winning touchdown. And then you get in that situation that we're talking about, could have forced a field goal. They could have been very close to doing that and getting the ball back with a chance to win or at least to tie again. But again, 8-0 for the Chiefs. They do march on, the last undefeated team. It's not always pretty, but they figure out ways to win. Much more to get to, including what's going on down in New Orleans as they have a big coaching change. We'll talk about that next here on the Lombardi Line.
Time. There's nothing more valuable. It's what drives everyone to make the most of every moment. We celebrate living large in the now. In a city where time disappears, we create experiences that electrify the soul and memories that will last forever. We go big, we go all night, and here, everyone is invited. So get loose and get loud.
This is Circa. You'll have the time of your life.
Coming up Tuesday on Follow the Money, the show everyone's talking about. The first TV show with the college football rankings comes out. Paul Stone with picks, Circa owner Derek Stevens in studio, and election odds. Follow the Money weekdays 4 to 7 Eastern on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Want to see who at VSiN is on a hot streak? Go to VSiN.com/picks to see all the selections and weekly leaderboard of VSiN hosts, writers, and guests. Become a VSiN Pro subscriber and get every pick sent to your inbox daily. Just head to VSiN.com/pro.
So, Paulie, have you had a chance to read the VSiN Daily yet?
Yeah, came in at 3 a.m. What's Bill doing up that late?
Well, rumor has it, it starts off with a 12-hour meditation session.
Then he just pours himself over film and live TV, really focusing and taking it all in. Bill's in with the biggest insiders, talking trade secrets, strategies, the whole nine, absorbing the info.
And then and only then can the writing process begin.
In Las Vegas, Bill's Late Night becomes your early morning. Wake up to the very latest betting insights in your inbox with the VSiN Daily. Sign up for free at vsin.com/newsletter. This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We continue the Lombardi Line here on a Tuesday. And, Michael, what a day it is, of course, around the National Football League, because it is the trade deadline. And right as we come out of break, we do have a trade, and it looks like the Lions have acquired Zadarius Smith. This is coming from Adam Schefter, reporting that Zadarius is going to be going to Detroit from Cleveland. You know how this day works as an executive better than most. That feels like a significant move for Aiden Hutchinson to try to get some sort of quote-unquote replacement there in Detroit. What do you make of that move on the surface? We don't know all the details of what Cleveland's getting back in return.
Well, Cleveland's going to get some draft pick. I don't know what it's going to be, but does it really matter if you're Detroit? I mean, because Detroit's going to be picking somewhere in the 30s. So if they send a third or a fourth there, which, could be the deal, I think ultimately you're talking about the 100th player, the 120th player. And factor in, too, Dave, NIL has changed the college draft. Mm-hmm. I'm going to keep saying this for a while now. Because when I first started in the league in 1984, many, many moons ago, we were a senior draft. No junior could come out. We had supplemental for players that got thrown out of school where there were situations. But it was all a senior draft, which was great because the players stayed in school 5 years. They got stronger. They got bigger. Their bodies were ready for the NFL. But now we are going to go back to a senior draft for the most part. Maybe not in the top 10 or the first round. But after that, if you have a decision to make to either stay at Texas Tech and get NIL money or become a sixth-round pick, you're going to stay at Texas Tech. And so those values of those later picks, 4th, 5th, and 6th, aren't quite as much as they were when we had the onslaught of 175 juniors coming into the draft. It's just the way it is. That doesn't mean there's not going to be good players. It's just there's a little bit of a devaluation. So when you give up one of those later picks, I don't think you're giving up a lot to go all in to win a Super Bowl. And Zadarius Smith gives them a chance to have an outside rusher. One thing Detroit can do is pressure from inside. They've got very good tackles. McNeil's a very good player. He pushes the pocket. So by getting some edge pressure, I think it certainly helps him. Will he be the reason they go to the Super Bowl? No, but he'll be the piece. They needed this piece. They really did, and I think it's something they had to do. They were targeting Smith all along. They've just waited it out, and I think Cleveland losing on Sunday, they basically have thrown up the white flag saying we might as well collect draft picks because this season, remember, they need the draft picks because that burden of Deshaun Watson that's around their neck is going to keep them from really improving their team over the course of the next 3 years. Not from draft picks, but from financials.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens with Cleveland now. And you're right, with Zadarius Smith on the move. I wonder if there's going to be other players on the move from Cleveland today. But we'll get to that much more around the National Football League on the trade deadline, of course. VSiN, we have a watch app now. It's going to make it very easy to listen to VSiN anywhere, anytime to get breaking news like this that just happened here with Zadarius Smith. You can visit the Apple app or go to Google Play Store now. Download the VSiN Watch app. You're going to get 24/7 access to our live audio video streams, replays of your favorite VSiN shows like the Lombardi Line. Easily stream video to your smart TV. Browse clips by sport. Use the search feature to find the specific VSiN expert insights you're interested in. The VSiN Watch app is free to download from both Apple and Android users. Visit the VSiN app and Google App Store now. Download the all-new VSiN Watch app now and become part of the Sports Betting Network. Let's get back to other news here on this trade deadline day. I don't know if the Cowboys were going to be buyers at the deadline, but after Sunday's disastrous loss to Atlanta, 27-21, the news gets worse because Dak Prescott is expected to miss several weeks potentially with this hamstring injury here, Michael. Also, CeeDee Lamb has got a sprained AC joint in his shoulder as well. He was in visible pain when Cooper Rush had to come into that ball game. Looks like it's going to be Cooper Rush against the Eagles, 7.5-point underdogs at home on Sunday. That total is down to 41.5. What do you make of this news in Dallas? And what do you think Jerry does now, knowing that his quarterback, your 3-5, your star wide receiver, maybe you get Micah back this week, but man, do they have – everybody's got injuries, but the Cowboys have it to arguably their three best players in Prescott, Lamb, and Parsons.
Well, I think this really, really puts Dallas have any chance of thinking that they're going to be a playoff team or a team that can really compete for a Super Bowl right out the window. They're just not good enough. They weren't good enough last week against the Atlanta team that we're not sure is even good enough. So to me, I think Jerry's just going to have to take his medicine and live through this and deal with next year. I think Parsons, he's probably not going to come back until he's 100%. Why should he? Why would you rush back? What are we rushing back for? Because this is really now we're in draft position mode, I think. To me, you have no running game. Cooper Rush at quarterback. I'm surprised. The line opened at 6.5 yesterday. Maybe it was built in that they didn't think Prescott was going to play. But I'm shocked this line only went up to 7.5. I don't know how you could take the Cowboys. I don't care what the number. I mean, the Cowboys have played horribly at home. They can't stop the run. This is what the Eagles want to do. And unless Jalen Hurts just completely has a meltdown, how do they not cover this number? I mean, think about this. Yep. The Jags were a 7-point dog on the road. The Cowboys are a 7.5-point dog at home to Philly. Same team. Think about that for a second, Dave.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know how you back America's team on Sunday against the Eagles. I mean, look, as much as a fan as I am, we're talking money here. That's a different conversation entirely. So I'm with you, Michael. I think that's going to be one-way action on the Eagles. I got to think this number goes up. And also, I think it's a great point on Micah Parsons. Why would you bring him back if this team feels like it's Sean Penn, dead man walking right now? I just don't see a scenario where the Cowboys are live in this game on a Sunday. Also, the big news to come out of yesterday, Michael, we were literally wrapping up the Lombardi line as we're finishing up the show before we turn it over to Gil Alexander on a numbers game, and we saw the news that Dennis Allen had been relieved of his duties after 7 straight losses in New Orleans. So Mickey Loomis is making major changes there. We're talking about the trade deadline as well. With the Saints firing Allen yesterday, they do have some pieces on that team, whether it's an Alvin Kamara. I don't know what people think of Derek Carr out there. Maybe a Williams. I know he's injured as their star corner. They've got some salary cap issues now to deal with. What do you make of the news of Allen being out, and on the trade deadline, does Mickey keep going further?
I mean, Dennis Allen got fired twice with Derek Carr as his quarterback. I mean, you read into it anything you like. I mean, think about that, right? I mean, he got him twice. I mean, look, I went home yesterday and I said, look, I got to watch the tape, the all 22 of this Carolina New Orleans, because there's that box score, as we talked about yesterday, made no sense at all to me. When you outgain an opponent by 150 yards, you have 150 yards on the ground rushing, and you win the turnover takeaway column, and you lose 275-0 before that game, and you're the one loss. And I watched it, Dave. And I got to tell you, I think the Saints, and as much as I like Dennis Allen as a person and as a defensive coach, they had to make a change. That team played with no effort. Their pad level was atrocious. They were high. They were soft. Not that Carolina was much better. Carolina was really bad. They were bad, too. It was 2 bad teams playing against one another. And that's the tragedy about the 2024 season in the NFL. We've got 11 teams that are not any good, and the only times they win is when they play one another. They can't beat good teams. I think, the second half of the season, I have had a very bad year on Russo picking games this year. And I think, to me, it's been, I keep waiting for the bad to become better, and they're not.
Right.
And so these favorites have been winning, and I think you're going to have to adjust your mindset. I think you have to adjust your power rankings a little bit here, because we keep thinking that Dallas could upset Atlanta. We know Atlanta's not that. No, it's just not going to happen. Washington playing the Giants for the second time. Well, I mean, Washington shouldn't have covered that game, but that's a whole other story. But the reality of it is I think there's so many bad teams, and the longer we go now, as we hit November, the less the teams that are out of it are going to practice hard. They're just not, because a lot of those coaches are in trouble. They're going to get worse. They're not going to get better.
Darren Rizzi is going to be the interim head coach here for the Saints. He's the special teams coordinator, being elevated to the head coach position. They are getting 3 at home against those Falcons. We just talked about coming off that win against the Cowboys. And, sometimes you get that interim coach bump, Michael. We see that from time in and time out. Is this team, we'll talk about the Bears down the road here and their issues in the locker room. When you see that they've lost the head coach has lost the team, you watched the tape, you saw that on film. It was easy for you to see. Do the guys then now get back up for the interim guy on Sunday against the Falcons? Or is this like, man, this is like, get me, 1-2 Cancun, get me to the end of the season?
Yeah, I think it's really that. I think it's hard to be the substitute teacher. Right? I mean, we saw with Antonio Pierce last year. There's a bump because the players were really happy that Pierce, that the dictator, that Josh McDaniels was gone. You know, he was working them too hard. He was too demanding on them, right?
Right.
And so, you know, in comes Antonio Pierce with a kinder, gentler approach. I don't know what was going on with Dennis Allen, but clearly Mickey Loomis knew that the messaging wasn't getting from the classroom to the players to the practice field. It just wasn't there. So I think to me it was a move he had to make, and I think Rizzi will do a good job. You could see the players embraced him immediately.
Okay, that's interesting. Seeing some numbers move up here on the Falcons side, up to 3.5 that the Falcons are laying Sunday in New Orleans. When we come back, we're going to have Matt Youmans join the program, get his thoughts on Monday Night Football, and also look ahead to Thursday night and beyond. It's the Lombardi Line.
Betting game with VSiN's exclusive betting splits. Stay ahead with real-time market trends and track bet percentages on any matchup, then uncover the edge by comparing them to the amount of bets placed to find out where the sharp money is headed. Upgrade to VSiN Pro to access betting splits, live odds, line moves, power ratings, and in-depth game analysis. Go to VSiN.com/pro to join VSiN, the sports betting network.
This is VSiN, the sports betting network. This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We continue the Lombardi Line here on a Tuesday. Dave Ross and Michael Lombardi here with you. Always a pleasure on a Tuesday, Michael, to be rejoined by our VSiN host here across the network, Matt Youmans. You can follow Matt on X as I do at Matt Youmans 247. Joins us now on the Progressive guest line. And also check out that Friday football contest that Matt's going with some of the sharpest minds out there. Matt, how are you on this election Tuesday? I got to know how you fared on Monday night with the Chiefs. And were you surprised that Todd Bowles decided to kick the extra point instead of going for 2 in the win?
First of all, I had no idea there was an election today. I have not, it's odd. I have not seen one political ad on TV recently. So that kind of gets me by surprise that you say that. Yeah, that's one of my biggest takeaways from last night. How can Todd Bowles not go for 2 in that situation? And his explanation was that, it was wet and the weather conditions. He decided to kick it. Well, the kick is a riskier play in the wet weather conditions like that. It made no sense whatsoever. When you're on the road, you're a 9-point underdog. Go for 2. Don't be a gutless coward and kick the extra point. And we've seen this a couple times. I thought the Patriots should have gone for 2 at Tennessee and didn't do it and lost in overtime. Bucks don't do it, losing overtime. And again, Kansas City Chiefs now 8-0, 6 wins by 7 points or fewer. The 2 double-digit wins by 13 against the Saints, by 10 against the Niners. This team plays one-possession games. They find ways to win, and they do it again.
Matt, I don't think it's gutless. I think he has to stand in front of his team. And I think you got to look at your team in the eye and say, I don't have any confidence in your defense to really go out there and stop Patrick Mahomes. I mean, it's easy for us to say go for it. But I think when you have to stand in front of your team and say, fellas, I went for 2 because I don't think you would have stopped Mahomes. I think it's a tough conversation. I think your credibility in the locker room, I think the other players, you're not going to give us a chance to stop them? They believe they could stop him. So I completely disagree. I think, to me, it wasn't gutless at all. I think it's the right way to play it. I think we in the media want to sit here and say he should do it, but we don't have to go stand in front of the team and justify our actions. Look, how did Brendan Staley? I mean, every decision he made was embraced by the analytical community, but he lost his team. Remember Keenan Allen tweeted out, what are we doing? So I think, to me, that's part of what you have to consider. And I do think the weather was a factor. I think, look, it's 50-50 to score from the 2-yard line on one play. 50-50. The Giants had 2 opportunities to do it in their game against Washington and went 0 for 2. So I don't know if it's a slam dunk. If you would have told me it's 90% chance he scores, I'm all in. But at 50-50, I'd rather take my chances and win with defense.
Well, the way I look at it, first of all, you don't have to stand up in front of your team and say, I don't believe our defense can stop him. You don't have to say that. But what you can say is, look how easily we just drove down the field against the Kansas City defense. We had all the momentum. Everything we were calling on offense was working. We got one play to win the game as a 9-point dog. Let's do it. I just think there's different ways to look at it. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I think you can make the case either way. I had no problem with kicking the extra point. I might be a little bit more conservative than some out there, but I think those are 2 different ways of looking at it, and I'm curious to know what those players really wanted to do in that moment. But I think Todd Bowles has the pulse of what he felt like was the best thing for him. His team did not work out in overtime. I want to get to some of your plays here, Matt, that you have this week, and one of them is very intriguing to me. It's Mike Tomlin and the Steelers going to D.C. to take on the Commanders. Commanders 7-2, and right now I'm seeing 2.5, 3 out there for the Commanders here at home. What do you make of this matchup? And it's not that far away. There's going to be a lot of Steeler fans in those terrible towels in D.C. on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about the fans and what percentage of fans are going to be there. But, first of all, I apologize to anybody who followed me on the Browns last Sunday, because the real Browns and the real Jameis Winston showed up in that game, and I was hoping it wouldn't happen for at least another week or 2, but it happened. I'm going to stick in that division here and stick with the Steelers. We know how good Mike Tomlin is as an underdog at home, 26-3 against the spread. He's pretty good as a road dog too, and he won in that situation in Atlanta in week 1. And the Steelers, number 4 in run defense, 90.5 yards per game. Number 2 in scoring defense of 14.9. if you look at the Commanders, number 29 in run defense at 143 yards per game. I'm going with a better run defense here. And the team that's really good in the underdog role, the Steelers, against the Commanders team, I think has been riding a wave here of good fortune. And Jaden Daniels has been playing the lights out for the most part. Do you buy into Russell Wilson yet? Not fully, but he is playing well. And I thought he looked a lot better in his second start than he did in his first. And let's see, I had one more thing here on Pittsburgh. I can't read my notes, but I like the Steelers. You're not going to get a full 3 here. I think there's one book out there with 3, but in general, 90-some% of the books are at 2.5. I think this is a game that Mike Tomlin's going to get on the road.
Denver, I'm with you, Matt. I gave out Cleveland too, and I'm a fool for doing that. I thought there would be some momentum carried over, especially when you break the Chargers numerically down. They weren't exactly lighting it up, and of course, when you blow 3 coverages on defense in the first half, you're going to lose a game. So thank you, Cleveland Browns. Anyway, how about Denver? I think Denver, look, I know they got destroyed there in Baltimore. Now they got to come back on the road and play Kansas City, and that line has moved to 9, and now we see maybe some 8.5s if it comes in. But you like to take the Broncos and the points. They beat them last year, so they played good games in both times.
They did beat them last year, and I remember watching that game, and this is going to be a different game, obviously. Last night we watched Mahomes, and he rolled his left ankle for the second time in 2 weeks. Probably going to be okay. Mahomes seems to have a lot of ankle injuries, but hobbles off the field, and then he hobbles back on and gets the job done, so I'm not going to emphasize that. But Denver was blown out by Baltimore, 41-10. That's what a lot of people are looking at here, saying, well, the Broncos got exposed. That's who we thought they were. Broncos did run the ball for 122 yards. They were outgained 396-319, even though the scoreboard was lopsided there. I trust Sean Payton a little bit more in this situation. I don't think the Broncos are as bad as that 31-point blowout look there. And what the Broncos are starting to do well, like I mentioned, is run the ball. And Bo Nix is one of those guys, one of those quarterbacks who can get out and run it. Denver's 5-4, have lost only one game by more than 7 points this season, and that was the one at Baltimore. So Peyton's got this team in ugly games and grinder games, and that's exactly what the Chiefs have played the entire season. Just talked about how they won 6 games by 7 points or fewer. And I've got to think that the Denver defensive schemes got to emphasize picking up Travis Kelce in the middle of the field. I don't know, Michael, how this happens week after week. Kelce last night targeted 16 times, 14 catches for 100 yards. You got to take him away. Bill Belichick would find ways to take away what the other offense does best, what they want to do the most, and that's feed the ball to Kelce. I got to think the Denver defensive game plan's got to focus on that. But anyway, I think it's going to be an ugly grinder, which is what Sean Payton wants, and a one-score game. Give me 9 with the Broncos, and I think they're going to hang in.
I don't know what happens in that tent. But whatever happens in that tent, Mahomes goes in, he comes out, he's Superman. Everything's fine again. That ankle's it's totally healed. Are you buying in on the other desert in the Cardinals? They're going to be hosting the Jets, laying a point here. Right now, first place in the West, Arizona. Are you buying in on the Cardinals?
Well, I wanted to throw this one to Michael and get his thoughts here because Cardinals, 1-point home favorites for the second week in a row, so they're not getting much respect from the odds maker. But I was on the Cardinals against the Bears. I thought it was a good spot to fade the Bears off the Hail Mary and everything that's happened with it seems like a dysfunctional operation right now with the Bears. How about with the Jets? So the Cardinals ran for 213 yards against that Chicago defense in that 29-9 win. Now they go up against the Jets defense that's been allowing 133 yards per game on the ground. Last Thursday night I was on the Jets, but man, that was an ugly game too. And it was filled with mistakes on both sides, and the Jets were lucky to get that win against the Texans. I didn't really upgrade the Jets after that game because they made so many mistakes, and I think the Texans were just worse that night. Michael, what do you think here? Do you trust the Cardinals back-to-back times here as 1-point home favorites?
I think the Cardinals have been really good. I mean, other than that Green Bay game and the weather, which they actually hung in there, that game was one of those games that they didn't look like they were into it, the weather. But I think they're playing really well. And the Jets run a similar style of defense that the Bears run, and I think they'll run the football. I think James Conner has been really good this year. Murray didn't even have to participate in that Bears game. He ran for 6 yards. He threw for less than 170 yards. So, yeah, I think so. Look, I don't know why we think this Jet team is just going to turn the key in their car and become great.
I don't either, but they get a lot of respect in the betting market here.
They are, for some reason, still hanging at 1 here on the Cardinal side on Sunday. Matt, great stuff. Thanks for joining us in the Progressive Guest Line. Get some breakfast. Get out there and vote. I know that's what you're doing for the rest of your day.
Super Dave, I'm disappointed we didn't get to talk about your Cowboys, but maybe next week.
I'm so glad we didn't. Much more to get to here when we come back on the Lombardi Line.
In the heart of downtown Las Vegas, a sports oasis awaits. Stadium Swim, the ultimate outdoor amphitheater, built for the ultimate sports fan, with a colossal screen that brings the game closer than ever. Reserve a daybed, private cabana, or lounge in the center of it all. 6 pools to dive into as the game heats up. And the best part, there's never an off-season. Open 365 days a year. Stadium Swim, it's always spectator season.
You spoke, we listened. Introducing the all-new VEASAN Watch app. Now, you can watch and listen to VEASAN expert analysis live wherever you are. Missed a show? No problem. Catch replays of VEASAN's full lineup at any time. View highlights sorted by sport. Or use the search feature to find specific teams and topics you're looking for. And the best part? It's free for a limited time. Download the VEASAN Watch app today. Available now on the App Store and Google Play. And join us on the Sports Betting Network.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
The trade deadline edition of the Lombardi Line continues here on this Tuesday. Michael Lombardi, Dave Ross here with you. And we talked about the big news so far today is that Zadarius Smith has been dealt from the Browns to Detroit. So we'll see if other moves start to trickle out as we continue on the show today. But also the big news now at this point, Mike, you've dealt with this as an executive. You know how this works on a trade deadline day. Is evaluating your players, the health of your players, and whether or not they're going to be able to come back, or you have to try to find holes to replace them. T. Higgins, Orlando Brown Jr. may return this week. That's according to Zach Taylor of the Bengals. They sit right now 4-5 in the division after getting a win over the Raiders on Sunday, trailing the Steelers here by 2.5 games. Steelers have only played 8 games, 9 games here for the Bengals. What do you make of Cincinnati before a really important game? They're getting 6 right now on the road against Baltimore, that total sitting at 53. What do you make of the state of the Bengals? I know it was the Raiders, but, Joe Burrow says, everybody, we're going to be okay. If you get a Brown back, you get a Higgins back, can this offense start to work the way we assume it should?
Well, I mean, look, that offense was dynamic the first time they played them. They had 10-point leads twice in the game. This is one of the games I lost in Russo, too. I had the Bengals in this game and end up losing it. It was remarkable because they couldn't get a stop. They couldn't even slow down Baltimore in the fourth quarter, nor could Baltimore slow them down. It was the interception on the Jamar Chase slant that cost them the game, and they couldn't match them. The Ravens couldn't tackle Chase. It was a back and forth game, which is fascinating. A team had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter with about a 90% chance of winning the game, and now they're a 6-point dog on the road. I mean, that's a lot of points in this game, I think. To me, that's way too many points. But the reason there is because the book and anybody who watches tape can't trust Cincinnati's defense. They really can't. I mean, they're just not good enough on defense. They're just not able to. Now, the word on the street is, and again, goes against most popular belief, is they're going to try to make some moves here at the trade deadline. Will they? I don't know. It's not Mike Brown's nature to do that, but maybe Mike Brown has taken a kind of a back seat and let the organization be run by Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor. We shall see. So they need help on defense. I think, to me, Baltimore understands what they did in the first game. They're going to need Orlando Brown back at left tackle. There's no question. They're also going to need T. Higgins back because without him, they're not the same team. And Burton didn't even show up to the Saturday walkthrough. They had to sit him on the bench.
We do have breaking news, Michael. Maybe they're listening to us. The Bengals just made a trade. Khalil Herbert.
There you go.
The running back from the Bears is going to Cincinnati. Okay, that's a good move. He helps.
Well, Zach Moss is hurt. Remember,
right.
Zach Moss is out.
So you got to get running back help.
So,
are you surprised it's not defense?
This is classic Cincinnati. Any way we could get a running back. I mean, seriously, you're going to trade for a running back? Now, wait a minute. 1 second here. I'm going to look at this here.
Okay.
Herbert is, he's 210. Another small running back that you're going to trade for. Really, this is what we need?
That's right.
But this is when you have a head coach who only thinks about plays. He doesn't think about how I can win the team. Trust me, when they walked down to Lou Anarumo's office and said, hey, we just traded for a running back, he probably went, oh, my God.
That was my first reaction because it's literally hot off the presses. 7th-round pick, by the way, going back to Chicago for Khalil Herbert. Look, nice kind of hybrid, fullback, running back, however you want to view him, backup type player. But I'm with you. I'd be more excited if you got me a corner. You got me some help.
That's what they want. They want a corner and a defensive tackle. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for that, and so – but again, when your head coach is in charge, everything comes down to we need a running back. Look, they went into the season with 2 nickel backs. I mean, are you going to take Chad Brown off the field? Chad Brown gives them some juice. He's a nickel back. They need a power back. They should have signed – I mean, when I'm watching Kareem Hunt, they should have signed Kareem Hunt. Yeah. That's what they need. They need a banger.
That's the second trade now to go as we go here in this trade deadline. Again, we were kind of thinking –
And we're only at what? We're not even at 9 o'clock.
Buckle up. It's going to be a day across the spectrum. Let's get to the Texans because we know that Stephon Diggs is not walking through that door the rest of this year. Nico Collins, according to D'Amico Ryan, said the team will, quote, will continue to evaluate Nico with that hamstring throughout the week. So there's a chance maybe they get him back. You know, I look at this division and we feel like it's over because they do have a 2-game lead over the Colts. They've beaten the Colts twice, so theoretically it's a 3-game lead here. But, Michael, very uninspiring in that Thursday night loss last week to the Jets. Obviously, Collins should be able to change that offense if he's right. Is this another team? And by the way, you're playing the Lions on Sunday night at home, and you're getting 3 at home. But that offense looks like it is stuck right now without those wide receivers. Is this a team that might be active today to try to get help that receiver position, or is Nico Collins enough when he's healthy?
I think they're going to wait and see if Nico Collins comes back. I really do. I think they feel like they can get him back. I'm sure Nick Caserio, their general manager, he's always trying to be active, looking for things. But to me, I think he's always going to try to improve. But I think, to me, what they need to try to do is get some offensive line help. I mean, I think that's where their biggest concern. This offensive line was a ragtag outfit against the Jets, and it's not getting any better, and they know they need to get it better. Kenyon Green, their first-round pick from A&M, he's out for the season. He wasn't playing good at all. The backup comes in, wasn't playing good. The interior of the line isn't good. I think, to me, that's going to be where their focus is.
One more receiver to update. That's down in the ATL. Raheem Morris says that Drake London is day-to-day, aren't we all, with a hip pointer. So don't know about his availability in that game against New Orleans. They've now gone from 3 to 3.5. Obviously, Dennis Allen won't be coaching the other side here for New Orleans with that news yesterday. What do you make of the Falcons? Because I'm with you, Michael. I don't know who they are yet. They can run the football well. Kirk Cousins is playing at a really high level. I didn't know if I saw that coming off that Achilles from a year ago. How important is Drake London to their success going forward?
Well, I think, to me, the one thing about this offense is they've got, gives them a lot of weapons. They can spray the ball around. They can do a lot of different things, and they're very effective doing that. And, when you take one piece out, but I think McLeod has come in and played really well. Mooney has been really effective for them. I mean, getting Mooney off the bench, getting him in there gives them more explosiveness. And so I think they can overcome the London thing. I mean, to me, this is a team that has to play from in front. They got to be able to run the football, keep their offensive line from having to be a drop-back pass team. And I think all those weapons really add into it. I think it's the sum of the parts, not one individual.
Yeah, they're really starting to play well offensively. Good to see Kirk having some success down there. Again, everybody, if you're not a VSiN Pro subscriber by now, there's no better time than the present to do just that. You're going to get access to our daily best bets. We've got a leaderboard showing you which VSiN experts have got the current hot hand. 19 hours of live programming that features expert breakdowns, in-game analysis, power, strength, betting, better ratings used by professional handicappers, exclusive betting splits for trends and analysis. So, again, become a VSiN Pro subscriber as little as $9.99. You're going to see everything VSiN has to help up your betting game. You can do that today at VSiN.com/subscribe, VSIN.com/subscribe. We understand why, Michael, this line has moved dramatically for the Cowboys. Eagles were 2.5-point favorites on the look-ahead last week. Now it's 7.5. We've talked about the injuries. Obviously, Dak Prescott's not going to be able to go. We don't know about that AC joint with CeeDee Lamb. Micah Parsons trying to get back in there. Also, A.J. Brown is not expected to miss significant time, according to the Eagles, and might even be able to play on Sunday. Let's flip the script here to the Eagles side. It seems like when A.J. Brown doesn't go, this offense, Saquon's been great, but they struggle without A.J. How key is he? I don't know that they need him Sunday, but why is he such a key, obviously, with that big frame that he's got?
Well, because you can cheat the box when he's not out there. You're not worried about the vertical passing game when he's not on the field, so now you can put more people into the box and try to take away. But remember, the spread of the offense, the horizontal spread of the offense, is the most critical component of the offense. And when you can make teams defend the width and the length of the field, every blade of grass becomes a real issue, and you've got to be able to handle that. And I think ultimately this is what Brown does. He gives them that vertical outside guy where you say, look, we got to take him out of the game. We got to double him. We can't let him beat us over the top. And they have such great chemistry between the two players, Hurts and Brown, that I think, to me, that is what's really important. And so that opens up Barkley. This is why the back really helps the spread. Because when you have somebody you've got to load the box for, it takes some of the pressure off the receivers. But when you have a receiver that you have to pick your poison, Dave, right? Do I go for the receiver or do I go here? And I think that's what it ultimately comes down to. And
one other injury note, just to update here. We talked about Christian McCaffrey might be able to go against the Buccaneers. That line has moved slightly here to the Niners' favor from 5.5 to 6.5. Buccaneers walking wounded, although they were a very game last night in Kansas City. Okay, hour number 2 straight ahead. We're going to have the coach, Chuck Pagano, is going to join us, and Jonathan Von Tobel as well to get their thoughts. That's hour number 2 straight ahead here on the Lombardi Line.
Sports bettors, this is your chance. VEASAN is bringing you an unbeatable deal. Get a VEASAN